we'll start with a little bit of. Actually, I have a question first. Two people made the beans and posted about it. Shannon and Cheryl. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on how the beans went. The Michaels famous beans for people who say they don't like beans. Shannon, go ahead, unmute. Tell me how it went. Tell me what you thought.
It went really well. I don't mind beans, but the, this recipe, it was, or I could eat it just like it is.
Yeah, right.
Um, yeah, it is really, and it's even better like the next day and the day after that because it's been marinating itself.
Yep.
But I used red peppers because that's what I had, and I don't like green peppers anyway. It is so good. Yeah, I've been eating it every day.
That's what I like to hear. And you're right. It can be by itself. It can go with everything. It gets better. I love it.
Yeah.
Cheryl, I believe, also. Cheryl, can you share your thoughts, your experience from the beans? So hopefully somebody else will copy.
Yeah, I had it this afternoon for lunch with a side of some leftover meatloaf. And but I just like beans with by themselves. Tonight I made a bean and lentil chili with eggplant that's no meat. So I'm eating a lot of beans today.
Excellent. Excellent. I love it. Awesome. Thank you, ladies, for doing that and for sharing. So anybody else that feels like they don't love beans, start with that recipe. And I have some more ideas that are going to come from that. And I might go over that at the end of this call real quick. So everybody, still waiting for everybody to post their results in the chat. Remember, it is a requirement. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that while I see how many meals were posted this week. There weren't nearly as many meals posted this week as there were last week. So there we go. Let's get a little better about that for this week. Everybody update in the chat. I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to do this food analysis. Now, this is from Tara, and she's not on call currently. But turkey sausage, kale, cauliflower rice, soup. Soups and chilies are excellent options if you are doing the shred, or you can lentil soup with some sort of meat or meat side is great. Kale, cauliflower, obviously, pushes up the vegetables. Chilies with the beans in it, easy to add vegetables like onions and peppers. So that's always a great strategy. And remember from last week, portion control doesn't matter. So eat till you're stuffed. Shannon, you want to tell us about this?
Yes. Those are zucchini boats. I
Oh,
so I
I like
just
it.
I took a zucchini, and when I hollowed it out, I take what I hollowed out and don't waste it, and I just mix it in with the ground beef, and that's ground grass fed ground beef with some corn, black beans, and the slightest little sprinkle of cheddar cheese, and then I have my own taco seasoning in it, and I bake it, and it's amazing.
This looks great. This is a perfect example of a perfect meal, and it has no limit to how much you can eat. No portion control, and it's perfectly balanced. You can crush it. This one was wonderful. Great job.
Yeah, thanks.
Here we have your other one, beans. I love it. This was a very big deal. Beautiful breakfast. This is what breakfast should look like on the shred. And then your results are proof. So that, oh, Shannon, you're still talking. What is this?
That's air fried chicken wings.
What seasoning?
I use some garlic, garlic powder, onion powder, a little bit of salt, and like a Parmesan garlic seasoning. I forgot what it's called, but I got it from Costco.
So this is an incredible example. So thank you for cooking this and posting it. Super delicious. Doesn't feel like you're dieting. Doesn't feel like you're restricting in any capacity.
Not at all.
You can eat tons of these air fried chicken wings till you're just stuffed out of your mind, and it won't matter. Pairing it with spinach, genius, because obviously you can crush a ton of that. If for any reason it wasn't filling enough and you couldn't keep eating wings, famous beans on the side would.
Yeah.
This is another great example. Great job, Shannon.
All right.
Love
thanks.
this. And again, a perfect breakfast. Repeating the same few meals over and over and over again is a wonderful strategy. This is 2 of this same breakfast for Shannon, as we're seeing. If we continue that, that's going to be a great idea. Here is Laura, which she looks like she just put beans on top of a salad. That's a totally fine strategy with what I'm assuming is a protein shake in the background. Simple, easy, can be very effective if you like what you're doing. Obviously, the beans recipe that I gave everybody, this fits really well for it. Super simple again, sausage, eggs, and a shake. Laura, this is actually a really good meal and simple, plain idea for people that don't know what to do for breakfast. If you don't want to do beans, you don't want to do vegetables at breakfast, that's fine. As long as you're sticking to the food list and you're choosing leaner protein options. I know sometimes, I'm assuming this is like turkey sausage. You do full fat sausage, full fat eggs, the portions can get larger, but the assumption is that the rest of the day you are unlikely to consume high enough fat for it to matter. It can be problematic sometimes for some people, but for most of us, for the most part, this would be a totally fine breakfast option. Shannon, turkey sausage links, 200 grams of zucchini, and 3 eggs. So basically a home run. There's no beans on this particular meal, but beans at breakfast can be difficult. It's one of the reasons why there's bacon in my bean recipe. But if you don't want to do beans at breakfast, guess what? Doesn't really matter. This is a very high protein breakfast. The eggs will, the full fat from the egg yolks will be filling enough with the zucchini. So you guys can do things like this at breakfast. It'll make a huge difference. Pre and post workout shakes, great idea. Another one of those same breakfasts from Shannon, just crushing it. Sengal, coffee and a protein shake, and mixing the two for people that want to put protein in their coffee. Excellent idea. There's Laura, me updating stuff. Homemade chili. Like I said, chilies are an excellent idea. If you're doing the shred and you struggle, chilies are an easy thing to have on hand, easy thing to fall back to, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit with these principles that I'm going to go over. Chicken and steak quesadillas, avocado. So Jen's not doing the strict shred rules, but she's eating well and following the pyramid. So there's that. There's my recipe. Protein shake, bananas, chili, genius, more of this stuff. And I think we're getting close to last week's meals. Melissa, this was really good. For lunch, if it was an appropriate portion size for you, then it was perfect. But here's an example: ground turkey, black beans, and she's got pico on it. If you add any kind of variety of salsas, lettuce, and cauliflower rice, you basically have a Chipotle bowl, which Mexican is very easy to turn into the shred. So you want to do a whole bunch of Mexican if you're on the shred, if you struggle for any capacity. Replicating it at home is a great idea. This one just triggered that as a thought. This was a great meal by itself, but also you can evolve that to a lot of different things, which is great. Shannon, grass-fed beef, lettuce, tomatoes, black beans, avocado. Depending on how lean the beef is, will determine the total number of or total grams of protein in this particular meal. But assuming that it is pretty lean here, she probably hit her targets for the protein. There's nothing unhealthy about this meal. Just when you go full fat beef plus avocado, you worry about budgeting to an extent. I don't think that was the case here. I think this is perfectly budgeted. And if it were filling enough, it's wonderful. Shannon, again, crushing those breakfasts. I love it. Shannon, 2 scoops of chocolate protein for breakfast. Then this is 2 chicken breasts, half an avocado, black beans, and onions didn't feel like eggs. I think she made that comment because this is a breakfast or earlier in the day. But simple. The chicken looks delicious, which makes these meals perfect. And again, there's no portion control requirements for doing the shred. The absence of green vegetables here, I know there's onions, but green vegetables you can do in significantly higher volumes that would be more filling if this wasn't filling. Looks like it probably is, but you can add chicken in any amount and vegetables in any amount to make that more filling if needed. Sauteed chickpeas sounds delicious. Canadian bacon and spinach as a breakfast. This is a really good idea. Chickpeas, that's also garbanzo beans. Chickpeas are beans. You can use them. They can be over-consumed, chickpeas. But I don't think anybody here has to worry about that. Plus, I'm your coach, so I'll watch out for that for you anyways. But this is an awesome breakfast idea, and I bet it's really delicious. Shannon, romaine, onions, tomatoes, black beans, boiled eggs, 6 ounces of chicken, olive oil, and lemon juice. This looks absolutely delicious. I can't believe I didn't see it before. This would be one that everybody should try to replicate. I just made a note for myself that we can add to the list. That's probably really, really, really good. Good to fall back on. Veronica, there's no description, but it looks like, chickpeas, beans, ground beef. That looks delicious. Cauliflower rice, shrimp, and green beans. Now, this looks like a meal that was made specifically for me. So obviously I love it. This is what I do a ton of if I'm doing the shred. Lots of meals like this. They're really, really good. Take advantage of, you can handle it, unlimited shrimp, which is one of the big benefits of doing the shred. Steak and shrimp over and over and over again is a great idea. It's also, you could do the shred, which would be, you can do steak and shrimp, cauliflower, fried rice, and all the vegetables that go in it with the right kind of sauce. You're basically able to replicate going out to the Japanese steakhouse. Obviously, you can't do the full fat and sugared yum yum sauce that they do, but they have some other sauces and some other ideas that would still fit on it. Veronica, amazing breakfast. Beans with eggs and sausage. We see a lot of that. Half a tomato stuffed with turkey taco meat, black beans, pico, and taco sauce. So again, Mexican is a great idea, and that's what she seems to be doing here. So that's good for all these current meals. Who's got thoughts or questions or comments about any of those meals? Anybody?
Yeah, Michael, are all those recipes in that shred book? Is that where a lot of these came from, or did Shannon make most of these up?
Shannon, she probably made most of them up, but and there were 2 Shannons that were posting that we were going back and forth to, but a bunch of them were. Shannon, can you unmute and tell John where or how you came up with a bunch of these recipes?
Yeah, which ones? Or any of them? I just kind of winged it. And the zucchini boats, I've been doing those for years, but the obviously the beans I got from you, and the what else? The homemade chili, the chili, I've been making that for years also. I just added grass-fed beef this time instead of regular beef.
Thanks.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Good question. John. So real quick, I'm gonna put some positive, whoops, what's going on here? I'm gonna put some positive public peer pressure on everybody that's on the call. Gotta update your stats in the chat. I'm gonna go over those at the very end here after I go over the principles again. So we'll recap last week's principles. Here we go. That I went over. The more protein you get in the morning, the more likely you are to be successful for the rest of the day. For people that are minimizing protein or getting the bare minimum, you're likely to struggle more for the rest of the day. Don't portion control. Eat till you are completely full if you're eating from the food list. use flavor enhancers in some capacity. It's going to make things easier over the long term. Don't get hungry. Sometimes it's going to happen, but if you know that you get hungry at a certain time of day, come up with a strategy to address it. Drink lots of water, or drink anything that is 0 calorie. Like I had said last week, it's okay to have a 0 calorie diet soda. I'm literally having one right now. It's better than a pint of Ben and Jerry's, especially when you really want one. And take the supplements that are needed. Posted the link last week. I can post it again and go more in depth on those throughout the course of this week. Tomorrow I should get more videos up about these. Here's this week's principles. And this is why I wanted most of you to turn your cameras on so it doesn't feel like I'm just talking to myself the whole time this week. We're going to go over this week's principles. There's 3 of them. 1, environment matters more than willpower. Number 2 is systems work better than goals. And number 3 is health and finance. Same thing. And because most of the things I'm going to talk about tonight relate to 2 or more of the principles, I just put all 3 of them up there and was going to break them down this way. So let me get this thing out. Good. So losing weight, or rather a weight loss first mindset, is where somebody says, or out loud or thinks to themselves, they'll feel better, they'll be happier, things will change, they will change the things they do after they get this weight off. That's a weight loss first mindset. My life will be better when the weight comes down. I'll be happier when the weight comes off. I'll make these different changes for being healthier and longevity and whatever after I do whatever it takes to get the weight off. That is a weight loss first mindset. That is an example of one piece of what would be self-talk. The other types of self-talk that we know are negative self-talk. It's not going to work. It's not happening fast enough. It's not going to work for me. I can't stick to it, whatever. We can talk a lot about negative self-talk and then how you feel about the situation. Those are examples of environment. That's the environment that you are in. It's inside of your head. You're looking at things incorrectly. And it creates an environment that is very toxic and very difficult for you to actually overcome, and makes willpower irrelevant. Because if you're putting off happiness and feeling good and putting down the building blocks of things that matter until you actually get the weight off, you're never actually going to feel good enough to get through. It's just one minor example. And then the idea that once I get the weight off, then I'll make these different changes is like relating it to finance. I'm just going to try to win like $1 million in the lottery, or I'm just going to run a whole bunch of these get rich quick schemes. And when one of them works and I get really rich, that's when I'll take the time to really budget, to really look at my income and expenses. That's when I'll look at my retirement accounts. But I just got to hit, millions of dollars first, and then I'll actually be responsible. Obviously, that's not really ever going to work. It's not how these systems work. It's an environmental thing. It's an internal environmental thing, and it absolutely violates systems work better than goals. You have the goal of where you want to be. Everything else is irrelevant until you accomplish that goal, and you're willing to do and sacrifice whatever it takes to get to that goal, no matter how miserable you are. That's an environmental. Systems and health and finance are basically the same thing that sets you up for failure. Just as one example of an environment. Another example of the environment that you are in that is more important than willpower is the people around you. Friends and family, whether they do or do not support you. So somebody that gets no support from friends and family, or gets the opposite of no support, but gets attacked and ridiculed for trying to make positive changes. It's not about willpower and discipline and pushing your way through it in that situation, because the environment is not just difficult, it's literally attacking you. So if we come up with strategies and we think to ourselves, like, I got to willpower my way through this, I got to push hard and got to be disciplined. It's just kind of dumb in that situation. It's really the environment that's the biggest driver to success or failure here, and we got to do things to actually address the environment in that situation. When I talk about environment, I mean your actual physical surroundings. So here's the example. In beginning of August, they start selling Halloween candy in stores, so you can get it early. If we do that, we buy Halloween candy, we put it on the shelf in the pantry. A couple of weeks, it's going to be gone. Because when I walk into that environment every time, it's right there. Happens every year, all the time. We had like 3 bags of Halloween candy before October. This year, we bought the candy early, we opened it. Everybody in the house had some, but we put it bottom corner behind stuff in the pantry, and I didn't touch it again. It's not because I had any sort of willpower, it's just because it wasn't there. My kids went trick-or-treating, they've got an absurd amount of candy. And they want like a piece each night, they can earn it. If their candy is at eye level in the pantry, or if it's on a bowl on the island, I'm going to stand at the island, I'm going to cook the world's cleanest, healthiest meal you've ever seen. Cauliflower rice and plain chicken and green vegetables. And while I'm cooking that healthy meal, I'm going to eat 40 miniature Kit Kats because they're right there in front of me. But we didn't do that. Now their candy is up top shelf, out of reach in the pantry, out of sight, out of mind, and I've had zero and will continue to have zero of it. That's an example of an environment. Just rearranging things and setting it up. The other example of your physical surroundings and environment is what you have available to you to consume at any point in time. So I don't know when I went over the principle. If you binge it, don't buy it. If you eat lots of chips and lots of ice cream, stop buying chips and ice cream. Then you can't eat them. You can't consume them. You're changing your environment in that situation. But beyond that, the examples of like meal prep ahead of time and meal planning and things out. When you have certain things that are available to you in your environment that are easy for you to put together, that are healthy, that are satisfying, that's an environmental thing that you have. So we have lots of Greek yogurt. I'll eat lots of Greek yogurt. We have lots of like lunch meat, things like that. But we also have the necessities for a couple of the recipes that I had shared that are just basics. We can throw together pizza, Caesar salad wraps, the McChickens that I've been sharing a lot of, a couple things like that. So if you don't know what to do, if we're stressed, if we're busy, we don't have a lot of time, usually people just go through the drive-through for convenience and lack of time. It's because the environment at home is not easier than going through the drive-through. But if the environment at home gave easier options than going through the drive-through, you would choose the easier options at home. No matter what kind of willpower you have, eventually you're going to go the easier route when things get difficult and the environment presents itself with the easier route. Even if you have an insane amount of willpower and you're willing to try to cook at home every single day, if it is way harder than going through the drive-through and you have kids, you have to do those things, you're going to default to that. Meal prep, meal planning, when I don't meal prep and I don't meal plan, I go through the drive-through. That's an environmental issue, not a planning and prep issue. It's not an organization issue. It's an environment issue, a physical, mental, emotional environment issue, which matters a ton. When I say systems work better than goals, environment matters more than willpower, and health and finance are basically the same thing, a good way to understand all of it is something I talk about with all of you guys during check-ins a lot is seasons of life. Sometimes we go through different seasons and different phases of life where things are harder. Sometimes things are easier. So maybe you have personal setbacks. Work is extremely stressful. You got a lot of family stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on with your kids. Your schedule's out of control and crazy for whatever number of weeks. That's a season. Chances are that's not 24/7, 365 for years and years and years. Usually it's a couple of months that pop up that way. That is an example of a change in environment. And sometimes we have breaks and lulls, we have more time to go to the gym. We have more time to cook. Things are a little bit easier. The days are longer. The weather's better. That's the environment that allows you to do better. And then something changes, life happens, and you're super busy and you're super stressed. That's a change in environment that won't allow you to do as good. And that's totally fine and totally normal to do better during when certain seasons of life and just maintain during other seasons of life, because the environment has a bigger impact on weight loss, weight management, success, failure, weight gain, whatever, than your willpower and your discipline and showing up every day. Sometimes some seasons are harder than others, and that's okay to just survive that particular season. Systems, if we put the basic systems in place that make it easy for us to maintain or to lose weight to accomplish that goal, then we can weather those seasons as the environment changes. But those systems are a huge part of the environment. If you're just looking at the goal, I'm going to do shred every day till I hit my goal, weeks and weeks and weeks on end, and then we get upset when we don't stick to the shred, and then we just completely fall off and just start binge eating. And we're like, well, forget it. I've gone out, I've gone off the wagon, I've gone off the whatever. That's just, it's not realistic to think that you'd be able to weather all those storms and lose weight continuously and just be disciplined all the time, because the environment's going to change on you. And those systems, if you don't have actual systems, you just have discipline and willpower, everything's going to fall apart over and over and over again. And the reason I say health and finance are basically the same thing is sometimes your income might be a little higher or your expenses are a little bit lower during different seasons, and you can save more money. And then all of a sudden the holiday season comes up. You got everybody in your family's birthday, all the different holidays, all this different travel, all your money gets spent during the end of the year, and you can't save as much in those final 2 months. That's totally fine. You don't give up on saving money towards retirement just because you have 2 months of high expenses or expenses that are exceedingly high, even during that period of time. You just weather the environment in that situation and be like, yeah, well, we spend a lot of money around on the holidays. It's not a really big deal. I just get right back to doing it after the holidays. Is the exact same way that we should approach things like budgeting for calories and diet and exercise. But people typically don't do that. They usually go to the opposite. They're like, well, I'm going to spend tons of money during the holidays. If we were relating it to health and diet, they're like, well, I'm not going to really eat that healthy during the holidays, so forget about it. And then they just binge themselves and they do nothing good for themselves, and they dig themselves into a massive hole. If we were to relate that to finance, you'd be like, yeah, we usually spend a lot of money around the holidays, so I'm just going to drive myself into massive debt and then try to figure it out after January. Everyone would be like, that sounds crazy. Why don't you just, spend the extra money that you need to spend, but it's not necessary for you to put yourself into crippling debt. But when it comes to health and dieting, that's exactly what we do. And that's exactly how we explain it and justify things, which is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. If you want to be successful with, finance, and I'm talking about saving money, retiring, and being responsible, or actually, let's take that. If financially you want to make lots of money and be very, very, very successful, you probably are really good at budgeting. Probably have multiple different streams of income so that if one thing goes wrong, you have some other things to back it up. You're always aware of the budget. You're always putting into these foundational buckets that create multiple opportunities. That's the same way that we should be doing things with health. And those are the systems that we put into place. So just because I can't get to the gym every single day, that doesn't really matter, because, I still have my eating habits. I still get my sleep. I still go for a walk. I still drink my water. So I can't get to the gym as much this week. It's no big deal. Or we've got a couple of events and I'm going to eat extra. That's no big deal. I can still hit my protein. I can still go for a walk. I'm still going to hit the gym. It's all going to be fine. If we look at those two things as similar, obviously you can see how those are environmental and systematic, but it's the same approach that you would want to have, especially with a long-term perspective. Nobody who's on this call that is not yet retired, but wants to retire, is like, hey, this is what I need to do between here and there in order to actually retire and live my retirement that way. So they're like, I'm going to try to get rich as quick as I can. And at the end of the first month, between now and retirement, they're not already multimillionaires. They're like, well, what's the point? No, there's no point in doing it. I'm just going to, I guess, work the rest of my life and I'm never going to retire. Why even try? I'm just going to start spending a lot of money. But we do that with health all of the time. I tried to stick to the shred. The shred didn't work. So it's like, what's the point of doing any of this stuff? It's like, well, like, because we're supposed to build things slowly and let things happen and grow and evolve on a particular pace, not just, get rich quick and call it whatever. We mix up the ideas of health on a much shorter timeline and much more drastic changes than we do on finance. But really, the pace should be very much the same. The way that you build systems, the way that you budget, the way that you have flexibility, multiple options, the way that you weather when things get harder for better investments long term. It's exactly what we should be doing with health. Now, all of this, the big analogy that I have for people is that building your weight loss, building your muscle, building your joints to feel better, all the things that you want to do health wise is much more like gardening than it is just building a permanent structure. So there's going to be foundational work that you need, things that are going to grow, and evolve, and change. It's not just you do one thing and it's permanent forever and it just sits there and holds. It's really like you're putting in a lot of work through various different seasons that's cyclical, and different points at different times will require different levels of attention and different levels of energy that will look very different. And if we say gardening, you plant, you water, you fertilize, you take care of it for X period of time before you even see anything, but things are changing. That's how you want to approach these things, and that they get recycled over and over and over again. It's seasons of life, seasons of living, how we should approach these particular things. Last note I have here, this bunch of random ramblings here, is your skill level is an environmental factor that is more important than willpower. And your particular skills impact your environment. So skills are a part of the environment that also impact the environment. And I circled past it earlier when I said, we have on hand the things for me to throw together Caesar salad wraps or the McChickens or the pizzas that fit the X ratio, the protein. They're very healthy, they're very lean, they're very high protein. We have those materials on hand, and it's within my skill set to throw them together in 20 minutes. So that is an important investment to make and practice to build your skills to find those particular options for you. I have the skills, so I'm interacting with my environment, and I put the things in my environment that allow me to use those skills. And the more of those meals that I have, and the more I set myself up, the better it's going to be. That's why systems of practicing these things to gain the skills versus the goal of just being disciplined, but the system of getting better at cooking is a much better idea. The environment of having the things to utilize my skills and practicing my skills makes a whole lot more sense. And giving myself the time to develop these skills, even if I don't see immediate changes, because I know it's going to pay off in the long term, is exactly how you would approach a financial system that we overlook with health. If you met a 21-year-old, and if you're retired, you've been putting money towards your retirement for a very long time, and you met a 21-year-old and you were like, hey, just put a little bit of it away right now, because the time value of that money is huge. It's through the roof. It might not seem like much right now. It might not seem like it's accumulating, but it's going to make a huge difference in the future. At the end of a couple of years, when they're putting a couple of bucks away every month, they'll be like, this is stupid. I don't see anything. I don't feel anything. But those that have been there and those that have been over the long term and are at retirement, they're like, hey, trust me, this is adding up. That's an example to a degree of finance versus health, of you investing in some skills that might not look like too much in the short term, but will have a massive impact in the long term. So for just the meals, the recipes that I gave, if you cooked it 20 times and it was never very good, but you practiced each time, you gained some new skills and you gained some new feedback, as your coach would be like, just keep repeating these couple of things because we're gaining the skills and we're going to find that piece. Most of the time we're like, man, I tried cooking that one meal that Michael shared and it sucked. So what's the point of me cooking? I'm never going to cook again. The goal is I'm going to cook these awesome things and I'm going to be jacked and shredded. That's a cool goal. A better system is every Wednesday and every Sunday, I'm going to try to cook one of these meals and get it a little better and a little better and a little better. And it's like, well, when would you stop doing that? I don't know. I just every Wednesday and Sunday I cook. It doesn't matter really what I cook. Just as long as I'm paying attention, I can try cooking new things. I can get a little better. That's a system. That's an investment in your future and in your retirement. And that changes and grows the environment because you have those things on hand in the environment. Then the commitment, the schedule of doing it on those directly impacts the environment. Does that make sense to everybody? I just talked for like 20 straight minutes about how those three principles relate, but I want somebody to give some sort of feedback or maybe make it into comment it into the chat so that we can discuss it a little further. But does those and do those make sense? Your environment, and do you see how, actually we'll start with that. Does everybody understand it, what I mean when I say environment is more important, has bigger impact than willpower? And if you do understand it, do you have any experience with it, any questions about it, or any stories to share of an environmental factor and how it's impacted or may impact you and how you're doing? And feel free to chime in while I read these comments in the chat.
I have an example. Well, my personal experience is that when I started working full-time from home, I was walking through the kitchen multiple times a day. And so that's what, talking about the Halloween candy on the island and all that. I mean, I still have some there and it's calling to me every day. But every time I walk through the kitchen, I think, what can I grab to eat? And when you go to an office every day, you don't do that. I would never snack when I was going into work in an office. So I have to adjust my kitchen, keep the counters clean and keep the food put away so that I'm not tempted to grab that jar of nuts that's sitting on the counter or whatever that my husband's snacking on,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful example because I've had people explain both sides of that same scenario. Either they started working from home and everything improved because they realized at the office were all kinds of different things and treats and parties and social events, depending on the person's job, right? So they were eating and consuming a bunch of that. And then they stopped doing those things at work, just simply change of location, and the weight started to come off, or the inverse of it. People started working at home and then they do what I do, working on something on the computer. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to take a 2-minute break. So I go down to the kitchen and I grab something and I just munch on it for like 2 minutes and I come back and get back to work. So it just gives me a breather. And then if I tally that up throughout the end of the day, it's like 1,000 extra grazing calories because I'm in that environment. It's very much an environmental factor where trying to willpower your way through that is just a dumb strategy because it's going to run its course very quickly. You're going to run out of willpower in that situation where you can't fight it. And it's not really a weakness. It's just there's a budget to willpower, just like there's a budget to everything else. And when you walk through the kitchen multiple times per day, as soon as you get tired or stressed about anything or lack of sleep, your willpower is shattered. And when it's sitting there and the environment is tempting you and your willpower runs out, because your willpower will run out.
It's very mindless. I eat something, then I don't even think about, just you don't think about it. But if you start tracking it, then it's like, if I have to write it down, then I think twice about doing it.
Yeah, because the cost in terms of a calorie budget,
right?
You see what it's actually costing you in the total budget, and it's like, is this really worth it to me? And you really start to learn a lot. So that was a really good example. So thank you, Cheryl. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions or reflections on the environment? Or would they like me to explain or talk about anything in terms of the environment has a bigger impact than willpower and strategy? It's okay if you don't, but floating it out there. Okay, well then we'll move to the next point of systems work better than goals. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have an example or a question? Or would they like me to clarify or give any further examples of systems work better than goals?
I just appreciate your analogy to gardening. I don't know that I've ever heard that, before, and it's an interesting way to put it, and it actually resonated quite well. So thanks.
Excellent. Excellent. Absolutely. I'm glad that did. That's one of my favorite ways to explain one of my favorite analogies that's non-financial, because all my favorite analogies are financial. But the gardening one, that's much more realistic in how we want to approach these things in terms of if you're taking care of a garden and what your expectations and timelines are, and that's going to be a cyclical process throughout the different seasons. You're not just planting a seed, having it grow really fast, and then grow really, really tall and just be perfect forever. You would go through different things for different parts of the garden. You know, we can go to different directions there, but that's how you should be treating yourself and everything all the time. So I'm glad that one stuck with somebody. That was a big deal. Anybody else? Systems work better than goals. Thoughts, questions, feedbacks, explanations.
I feel like like you just said, I don't know if I'm right, but it's just what it matters is the process of, that you're going through in order to get what you want. So I feel like in my case, the system that I'm doing right now is prepping, and it's actually helping me because I work in a school. So I don't have the time to cook. I'm not at home. I will have to work 8 hours a day. So if I prep, I'm going to be okay. So that's kind of part of my system.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful example of systems work better than goals. A very specific one. The other example we can give that I think paints a very good picture, obviously very biased about it, is the pyramid that we all know and love because I go over with you guys all the time. That's an example of systems work better than goals. So it doesn't matter what goal you have. If you put the goal at the top of the pyramid to change the frame and the context of the pyramid itself is going to remain mostly unchanged. So I want to lose this much weight, or I want to lose this much fat, or I want to get to this goal. If I put in each block as a system, so how can I build systems into my life that would allow me to get better quality sleep? Some simple example, I go to sleep earlier, I go to sleep at a regular time and wake up at a regular time. I improve my sleep hygiene. I take magnesium and calcium and vitamin D and melatonin or whatever. Then the next one over. Systems that allow me to get more protein at breakfast, more protein at lunch, more protein at dinner. And I get that protein number up to 0.7 and then 1 gram per pound. And then I start, I drink water before I brush my teeth. And then I drink water with lunch and I drink it with dinner. And then I have a certain portion of beans and vegetables at this. Those are systems. And I start practicing and improving the skills that allow me to invest in those systems. And the more of those systems I put into place, the more inevitable the goal becomes. And if I'm doing all of those things just habitually, and I'm practicing the skill to make them habits, that's developing the system, the probability that I put all the systems in place and I don't achieve my goal is 0. Might not be as fast as I want, as if compared to if I just blindly aimed at the goal and made all kinds of crazy sacrifices. But those systems are not only more permanent, but they increase the probability of success in the future. And if you look at the systems of the pyramid and you start building those not as goals, but as systems, how do I live my life that makes this happen, as opposed to suffering to get there? Those are systems that inevitably get to the goal, which is more effective than the goal itself. And obviously, I gave a lot of examples of health and finance, and I do that all the time with you guys. So hopefully you guys understand those. But who has any other questions or thoughts on any of those things before I move over to the chat? Anybody?
Yeah, you mentioned beans a number of times for breakfast. I'm sorry I missed something, but what beans do you particularly suggest for breakfast time?
So John, you're on Facebook. Are you in the Facebook group?
Yes, I believe so.
So specifically, it's talking about, oh man, I'm showing you. I'm not even sharing the screen. I'm sorry, it's on my screen that you can't see. Here we go. So my world famous beans recipe. Did I email this out, guys, or no? I guess I did not email it out.
Okay.
There you go. So I just tagged you in this, John. But it's this beans recipe that I made for people that don't like beans or who
Okay.
say they don't like beans. And it goes with everything, in my opinion.
Okay.
So if you're on the shred and you're sticking to the shred, you want to have beans and vegetables at every meal in order to feel full and hit your targets and make it sustainable. If you don't have beans, you have to double the protein and the vegetables, which gets difficult. If you do that at breakfast, it can push the fat up pretty high. So how do you get beans and vegetables at breakfast? Well, excuse me, you get creative with it. But simply for me, for you, I gave you guys the black beans recipe that I use that I feel is mostly universal. And we're going to do a challenge with this particular beans recipe because we got good feedback in person. And somebody was like, why didn't you just make this into chili? And then some other people made some comments. And I'm like, we're going to open that up to the members. So everybody can take this, turn it into something more and share it. So I'm going to figure out I'm going to make a chili with it and a breakfast with it. We'll grow from there. But John, this is the recipe.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll go to the chat for progress and results so far. Shannon, 4 pounds last week. You were killing it. Your meals were perfect. Let's keep that going. Rhonda, what a great start. That's a crazy big deal. Carol, you were on vacation. We talked about that. You're doing wonderful. Alyssa lost those inches over 2 weeks. It's great. Cheryl, you lost 2 pounds by Friday. They showed up again this morning. Did you do the refeed?
Yes.
So it's water weight.
Probably over refed.
There's no such thing as over refeed. If you don't believe me, go back and reread the guide where I talk about how I gained like 12 or 16, something crazy pounds over one refeed, and it comes right back down. So the pounds didn't come back. It's just the natural cycle of the refeed. If you did a refeed and the scale didn't go up, that would probably be a red flag. Today's only Monday, so we'll see where you are on Friday
Okay.
next week. And then some other comments about what we were talking about, the environment. Excellent. So we crushed it. Who has any other questions, thoughts, or comments, or anything they want to talk about with me right now before we wrap up this, what I thought was a wonderful Zoom call? Any questions or additional questions or anything? All right. Excellent. There's going to be more principles next week. We just restarted these Zoom calls. So how we're going to do them and what we're going to talk about is going to continue to grow and evolve a little bit. There are some ideas of things that we're going to do that'll make it interactive, some things that we did in person in the past. So keep jumping on. We'll grow the lessons, grow the principles. We'll do some really cool things. I appreciate it. We're going to keep the regular schedule on Mondays. Then also I shifted my office hours. Follow up with it so you can check in with me. I'll still be able to do some in-person ones, but again, I'm going to be out with the baby coming soon. But obviously, Taylor is amazing. If you haven't met Taylor yet, Taylor's amazing. And we've brought on some other additional coaches who are going to be able to handle check-ins soon. So you'll have options. Obviously, still want to, do all of your check-ins with me. I opened up hours for flexibility for when I'm out during my leave in December. So you'll have a million options. I'm not leaving anybody. I don't think anybody on this particular call was afraid of that. But if anybody was, I'm not ditching you for Taylor or any other coaches. But they are wonderful. I do believe in them. That's why I hired them. So we'll have all those different options. Those are the things that are coming. Think of anything. If you need anything, just call me, text me. Otherwise, thank you. This was a lot of fun. I had a blast. And I'll see all of you at the gym tomorrow or Wednesday. And I'll see you on the call next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night.